Morning, everybody. So, wow, okay. Just want to double check my volume level. Sometimes OBS gets a little wonky. Oh, hey, my green screen isn't fixed. There we go. Now you guys can't see the little putting green that's behind my green screen. So, today, Coffee with Steve. What kind of heavy subject is he going to come up with today? Well, I kind of came across an interesting article this morning, and it just started prompting me doing a little bit of investigating. Not a lot. I haven't really been able to do a full, complete analysis, if you will, of exactly what's going on, but it really kind of piqued my curiosity when I first read about this. So let me take you to the Wayback Machine. We're talking December or October 2018. An article that Bloomberg posted was about how there was an attempt, a perceived attempt by China to infiltrate some of the U.S. companies. And they were doing this through little microchips on boards. I don't know if too many of you knew about this, but it kind of shook the industry a little bit. Let me go ahead and share my... There we go. I'm really close today. Maybe I should go fix my camera. Hold on here. Let me... Camera settings. I'm really, really close and big in the screen, and I don't have that much room to wiggle around here. Let me fix that. A little smaller. There we go. Hey, see, now you can see me a little bit more normal size. Okay. So this was an article that was released back in October of 2018 by Bloomberg, and there's a lot of interesting things in here. So Bloomberg released this saying that during a top secret probe, and you can just read this, during the ensuing top secret probe, during the ensuing top secret probe, which remains open more than 3 years later, investigators determined that the chips allowed the attackers to create a stealth doorway into any network that included the altered machines. Multiple people familiar with the matter say investigators found that the chips had been inserted at factories run by manufacturing subcontractors in China. So obviously we have a lot of exports in the U.S. and all across Europe of these different boards that are manufactured in China. And we also get some of our chip technology. The chips had been inserted during the manufacturing process. Two officials say by operatives from a unit of the People's Liberation Army. In Super Mircro, now remember this name, the company name is Super Mircro. Okay, so in Super Mircro, China's spies appear to have found a perfect conduit for what the U.S. officials now describe as the most significant supply chain attack known to have been carried out against American companies. All right, so you have a situation here where no one's really taking a look at the hardware. At least according to the article, no one is really taking a look at the hardware that's coming into America. And honestly, like that would be really hard to do anyway. It's kind of, there's there's probably millions of these circuit boards coming across into America that we're importing from China. It would be awfully hard to inspect every single one of those. It also affected almost 30 companies, including a major bank, government contractors, and the world's most valuable company, Apple. Yes, Apple. So Apple was using these Super Mircro chips in their systems, and so obviously that means that they may have been compromised. All right. I think that's all that I have highlighted in this article so far. There's a lot of information here. Okay, there's really, really a lot of information, and I haven't really had a time to go through it because I didn't come across this article just recently, but I came across one that I'm going to get to in just a moment. But so here was the basic big drop, right? China might be infiltrating our systems, our economy, our businesses, our government contracts, everything. Like we have a major compromise on our hands if this is true. Again, don't forget to drink your coffee. In goes the coffee, out comes the code. All right. So that's what Bloomberg has. And they have a very long article. They talk about things like from the FBI and stuff. But what's kind of interesting is what happens next. So Super Mircro did an audit of themselves, but they got a third party to do it, right? They're no dummies. They're not just going to say, hey, we did an internal audit and we found nothing. But essentially they did do a third party evaluation. Notice the release date of this is December 14th. Okay. So this happens on December 14th. When was the article released? This October 4th. So you're talking about 2 months for Super Mircro to respond and do an internal audit. Now, by this time, understand what Bloomberg is saying is that for 3 years, so since 2015, there's been this infiltration. What do you think an audit of after this Bloomberg thing drops? What do you think an audit would show? Do you think that China is going to still continue doing this stuff? If it gets plastered on, it becomes rippling effect across the entire industry. Do you really think China is going to just keep on doing it? And then that it's going to get found by some, even if it is a completely, arbitrary, some sort of third party that is totally above board about it. Do you think that they're still going to find anything? And do you think they're going to, within only 2 months, that they're going to be able to do a wide enough inspection of the processes, of everything, of the history of the last 3 years to really fully come to a conclusion? I'm spitting over my words today. So 3 years they've been doing this, and in 2 months you're going to come back and say, yep, nothing here. Nothing to see here. Well, let's go ahead and read the article. Maybe my questions are unfounded. Okay, so Super Mircro Computer says a third-party audit of its recent and older motherboards has not turned up evidence of a spying chip as alleged in an explosive report 2 months ago by Bloomberg Business Week. Now, again, I don't know the processes. I'm speculating here a lot. But they're going through recent and older motherboards, which is good. At least they're going through older motherboards to try to check this, to see if they could find any evidence. But again, that's, I don't know. I mean, that seems like not enough time to go through that many things and really look for it and find it. Unless you really know specifically what you're looking for. Okay. No government agency has ever informed us. So Super Mircro basically put out an announcement that no government agency has ever informed us that they found malicious hardware on our products. We've never seen any evidence of malicious hardware on our products. Now, I just want to address this real quick. If your company is being suspected of possibly having espionage occurring within it, do you think that the government's going to come and tell you, hey, we suspect you of espionage? Yeah, I'm just saying, I understand, like, if I was also coming from the other perspective of the Super Mircro side, it's like, we didn't know this was happening. It's very possible. Like, we don't know what the heck's going on. No government agency came to us and told us anything. That's very possible. I don't know that there's, just because he says that no one has come to tell them, this is not evidence in and of itself that it wasn't happening. You know what I'm saying? If the government is suspecting you of having potential espionage in there and they don't tell you about it, that doesn't necessarily mean that they don't suspect you. I'm just saying. Okay. So it also put Super Mircro in a tough position trying to prove a negative as suspicion around Chinese hacking efforts swelled. And that is a very good point. That's a very, very good point. It's really difficult to, to prove this negative. Like, how do you prove that you don't? You can only just kind of like do some sort of external audit. Have a third-party group come in and try to audit your materials and say, yeah, no, it's free of anything. We don't find anything. And then even that's still not necessarily going to allay all the fears, as here I am talking about it too. And I kind of like, hey, maybe there's still something going on. Okay. Now, one of the interesting things that also happened around this time is that Amazon bought, was it they bought or they partnered up with this same company, right? So they also, and I wish I could find it. I read it somewhere in the article and I forgot to highlight it, but it's essentially Super Mircro was partnering up with Amazon. I think they were actually bought by Amazon. And this was right around the time that this story from Bloomberg dropped, okay, which really kind of impacted the whole economics of that too. All right, so the U.S. government uncovered plans by China to subvert Super Mircro around 2014 and informed. So this was what Bloomberg was alleging, and they're just kind of recapping it. So Bloomberg alleged that the U.S. government uncovered plans by China to subvert Super Mircro around 2014 and informed the White House. That information was gained in part through clandestine monitoring of Chinese officials and subcontractors Super Mircro used, according to the report. Super Mircro published a video describing the process it uses to guard against supply chain tampering, including prohibiting any contractor, team, or employee to have unrestricted access to the full design of the motherboard. We require that Super Mircro employees be on site without assembly contractors, where we conduct multiple inspections, including automated optical, visual, electrical, and functional tests. So there's one thing that I think, if you do a thorough diagnostic of the chip, understand that they're alleging that there's this little tiny chip that's going to be on this board that's kind of picking up on things. And there's a lot of things that it's supposedly doing. Like, it has network capabilities, it's got memory, it's got all sorts of things. So that means it's got to have some sort of power, right? It's got to be supplied with some sort of power. So if that's going to be the case, if you run diagnostics on it, you should be able to find where there is a dip in the electricity from one circuit to another. So having a general diagnostic to try to find where there might be a drop in amperage makes total sense. But there is possibility of some fault tolerance, right? There might be some tolerance there. And whether or not the amount of electricity that this little tiny chip requires would be within that fault tolerance. So it's possible, right? It's very possible that there could still be this chip on there, even though that they go through all of these different inspections. But the likelihood seems to get smaller and smaller and smaller, assuming that any of these boards that they scanned would have potentially have had a chip on it. You would think that they would have discovered it, okay, doing these kind of scans. And one of the things that's not being released here is how many boards. This is what's kind of interesting to me is at least through what I was reading, I did not see any sort of audit trail that tells us this is how many boards we inspected. So you can say we inspected old boards and new boards. We inspected 5 old boards and we inspected 10,000 new boards. Does that mean that you're going to find something that's from the older ones? We don't really know. And this is kind of this, what's being actually reported, what's actually being said is kind of maybe not necessarily getting us all the information and details that we really, really need. Okay. Right. So let's move on to, so today's announcement lays to rest. So this was, again, part of the company's letter where they're announcing today's announcement lays to rest the unwarranted accusations made about Super Mircro's motherboards, the company letter reads. So they're really, really hoping that they can just turn around this idea, right? Because there's just kind of this feeling within the community, boy, maybe they've been compromised and they can't really prove that they haven't been. I mean, they're doing their best, but how do you prove a negative? So they're really trying to get that PR out there that, hey, we're fine. There's no breach here. There's no espionage. Don't worry about it. We're fine. Okay. Now, this kind of escalates a little bit because just today, or actually it was yesterday, I should specify. Yesterday, it was announced that Super Mircro is moving production out of China in a bid to allay U.S. customers' concerns about spying, even though independent tests have shown no evidence of cyber espionage. So, I just got to ask, if there's nothing to see here, why are you moving? I mean, that's going to be the next question, right? But again, from their perspective, this is a very good play. This makes total sense. we should be so far removed from China at this point because that's where the concerns lay. Let's get out of China. That should dispel any further notion that there is anything to do with our supply chain. So this is, in my opinion, this is the smart move. This is the right move by Super Mircro. Get out of China altogether. Not because, and I'm one of those people that I do want to see U.S.-China relations become better. I do want that to happen. I don't think they're the boogeyman. I think that there's a lot of geopolitical issues that are going on right now, especially with like Taiwan and the South China Sea. There's a lot of concern there. There's a lot of things that China is doing that should be very concerning. But at the same time, I'm kind of one of those people that thinks that the more you believe somebody is the boogeyman, the more they become the boogeyman. And that's what's happening. I think China, they have their own self-interest, which everybody else does, and you have to learn to figure out how to cooperate with them. And we could get into this whole, Trump relations and doing the whole the tariff and trade war thing. But I'm not going to get into that. I think this is just overall a very smart move by Super Mircro to say, we've got to get out of there because the perception, at least on us, and also transversely, I guess transversely is the right word, but because they're also part of Amazon now, it's very important to Amazon. So this might be something influenced by Amazon. Amazon may actually be doing this play. But again, total speculation on my part. I don't really know the particulars. Okay, however, an independent audit made it clear that if there have been any Chinese spy chips on Super Mircro servers, they've been hard to find. Tests found no evidence of malicious hardware on current motherboards, as well as those from the generations sold to Amazon and Apple, which is what sparked the original Bloomberg story. Despite there being... So, oh, by the way, and Apple wanted Bloomberg to retract the story, which... I don't know about you, but I don't know that anybody even really cares about retracted stories. How often do retracted stories make the news? It's usually just the hard things. And that's kind of one of the sad parts about news is that when a news organization gets it wrong and they retract a story, that doesn't necessarily have near the same impact as the initial story. Okay, so despite there being no hard evidence of foul play, Super Mircro's decision to move supplier production comes at a time when security concerns regarding Chinese technology is increasing. China manufactured around 90% of the motherboards used in servers shipped worldwide in 2017 last year. That figure dropped to less than 50%. All right, so I don't remember exactly where I saw it, but it was, here we go. So Yossi Applebaum. So the cited security researcher, so this was, so Super Mircro's problem started when Bloomberg reported that an unnamed major U.S. telecom company found manipulated hardware from Super Mircro, modified at a factory in Guangzhou. In its network, the cited security researcher, Yossi Applebaum, also said that other companies had fallen victim to China modifying hardware for surveillance. So, Yossi Applebaum. I did a little digging, and I believe, I don't know for sure, but this would totally make sense, that this Yossi Applebaum is this Yossi Applebaum from Sepio Systems. Okay, now Sepio Systems is a security agency that tackles hardware, right? They tackle security issues regarding hardware. And Yossi is an Israeli American. Okay, so he's a CEO of Sepio Systems. He's responsible for North America operations Sepio. He brings 25 years experience in security, networking, computer science, and control systems, along with a wide angles perspective to cybersecurity threats and unique security solutions. So I'm pretty sure this is the guy, just based upon the credentials and who apparently was the whistleblower here. Yeah, this sounds like the guy. Now, what I think is interesting to note here, and I'm not saying anything, this has nothing to do with, shall we say, race, okay? Nothing to do with that, but Yossi is Israeli, okay? Not only is he Israeli, but so is the chairman of the board of Sepio Systems. In fact, Tamir here is a former director of the Israeli Mossad. So you've got somebody who works for Sepio Systems, the CEO, in fact, coming out and saying, well, we found that we're telling you that we found some hardware on these. We found these malicious chips on these motherboards. And it just so happens that the board of directors has the chairman of the board is a former director of Israeli Mossad. Now, why is that interesting? Well, guess what's going on between Israel and China? Things are getting much better for Israel and China relations. Israeli exports of computer chips in China soared last year as Chinese companies bought more semiconductors made in Intel's Kiryat Gat plant. New data showed semiconductor exports to China jumped 80% last year to $2.6 billion. Now, I don't know if you have the same dot connecting synapses going on that I do, but if Israel is starting to do more semiconductor exports to China, how would they go about trying to convince Israel to do that? Like, how would they convince the Israeli companies to start doing more trade? There we go. More trade with China. Well, if you start to lose some of the China exports out to the U.S., where is China going to start to do some of that trade, right? Where China's looking for where it's going to do some of its trade. And Israel has not only, obviously, their number one trade partner is the U.S., and they're trying to bolster some trade with China because China is their second largest export. So that means that there's something going on there between Israel and China, and the Israelis are trying to push more of their product to China. And I don't know about you, but there's something about this. The former director of Israeli Mossad of Israel, is basically the guy that is the board of directors on this company. Their CEO comes out and has this big hard-hitting article that says Super Mircro from China is bad. So maybe if our supply chain is coming from Israel, going through China, and then back to the U.S., problem solved, right? I don't know. I'm going to let you guys connect your own dots, but there's something a little bit about this that just kind of... I'm interested in hearing your guys' comments, because maybe you're connecting some different dots than I am. Maybe there's something that you're seeing that I'm not. Maybe you think this is just perfectly fine, normal business. But man, just to see that new data showed semiconductor exports to China jumped 80% last year to $2.6 billion. 80% in 1 year. Conveniently, right as the news article hits, right towards the end of 2018. I don't know. Something about this. I don't know. Okay, well, that's probably going to do it for me. I'm going to check and see what we got for any chat comments. Nope, no chat comments. That's all right. Other than Kent just saying we need epic music. Yes, we need epic music in the mornings, don't we? Let's see. We got 5 people watching. Well, thank you everybody for joining. I really appreciate it. This is kind of an interesting thing. I just threw this together this morning. I just saw this very interesting article regarding how, Super Mircro is making this move. And I think it's a good move on their part. But there's just something about this seems a little weird that Bloomberg would release this thing. And it turns out that it's from somebody who is an Israeli American. And, oh, by the way, his chairman of the board of his company is a former head of Mossad. I'm just like, that's some interesting dots to try to connect. I don't know about you, but I find it interesting. I find this kind of thing something this is kind of one of those hidden things that's going on behind the scenes, and you just don't really find a lot of information about. And I'm hope that maybe this has informed you a little bit. I hope maybe, and again, I don't want to go into conspiracy theory. I'm not thinking that there's any sort of major conspiracy here that, we should all be very worried about things. I just think that there's some interesting geopolitical stuff going on here. And sometimes I wonder if our news is being manipulated in some way by some of these agents, right? By some of these actors trying to give the news information just for political purposes and to spark certain economic revenue streams for possibly even Israel. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me, guys. I know this is a very different topic, very, very different in vein from what I typically talk about, but I think that it's well worth discussing and it's worth talking about. So your insightful comments are definitely welcome. Please drop those in the comment section below this video, and I look forward to that really good conversation. Don't forget, every day we do start this stream at 7:30 every morning. And if you guys want to join us, you can always, every weekday, 7:30, you can be here and we have a good time. So thanks everybody for joining, and I will see you guys tomorrow for live Q&A.